What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous. He has a license that says so. Went to school for it. Mr. Grant Hughes, Esquire, or something. Look ahead train, off-season look ahead train, excuse me. It's not a regular season look ahead. Off-season look ahead train rolls onward. We are on to the Boston Celtics, who I don't think, I will say before we dig into the nitty-gritty, I never expected recording both the Cavs and Celtics look-aheads before the conference. If you would have said one got eliminated, I'd be like, okay, but both of them just being out, and we were almost in a position because Thunder went to Game 7 against the Nuggets, whereas, these three teams that dominated the regular
Right.
season, none of them made the conference finals, which would have been wild.
Yeah, there was a clear top tier in the regular season, and now there's one team from it left standing. Not on my bingo card, I would say.
Let's go through these Celtics offseason vitals. There's a lot to get to, including the Jason Tatum injury and how that impacts everything. But going into the offseason, they project to be more than $20 million into the second apron. That's after factoring in they have the number 28 pick. There are some non-guarantees that could impact that. However, one big thing that's not included, again, 20 million into the second apron plus 20 million plus. Al Horford's a free agent, and I didn't put Al Horford's cap hold in there. So he's a UFA. They could re-sign him. But I think this is the question that will guide us throughout this entire Celtics process, Grant, is how aggressive will they be with the cost cutting post Tatum injury? Because I think there's some reporting that suggests they were always going to cut a ton of money this summer. You and I were always kind of like, why wouldn't you suck it up for one more year, figure it out in 2026? Before I throw it to you, just as a note, if they're cutting costs, I'm assuming it's to not just get out of the second apron, but it's, hey, we don't want to pay the tax next year without Tatum. And that means, and now I want to be clear, they have until the end of the season next year to do it. But it means cutting $40 million and more than $40 million in salary, which, Grant, that's a lot of money. I don't know if you know this. $40 million is a lot.
That's a decent amount of money. So the extent to which they're going to cut costs is really interesting to me, because let's kick this around, because it feels like there's going to have to be like a cascading effect, which is to say you've got to get that 20 off to get under the second apron if you would like to aggregate salaries in a subsequent trade, because when you're over it, you cannot do that. Correct. So it's like, okay, how do we get under? First of all, Al Horford can't be back, because then that number just gets higher, that you've got to cut to get some flexibility. So if Horford is not back, that's one. So then is it Jrue Holiday that gets moved and somehow you don't take back enough to stay over the second apron? I mean, good luck. I guess that means you're involving Brooklyn or a third team or some other, I don't know. Memphis has a little.
Brooklyn. It's just, to be fair, there's probably some large trade exceptions out there.
But do you see what I'm getting at? Where it's like, there doesn't seem like there's a great half measure here, where it's like, to get into a spot where you can do like non-insane, ridiculous, implausible trades, you've got to cut enough to get under the second apron. And then it's like, oh, we can do Hauser with Porzingis for some, you know what I mean? Like there's ways to get there, but it's like, you can't, it's hard. I struggle to see the way where they peel off like one or two and then they stay put. It's just, it feels like once you start cutting costs, it could just be like, oh, we're just chainsawing this thing. There's no scalpel here.
And I think what's interesting about that is, at first I was just looking through this as, well, you make it Porzingis is the expiring contract, figure out a way to get rid of him for sure. Maybe Jrue Holiday, but then it's Tatum's going to be back in 26, 27. You want to hold on to Jaylen Brown and Derrick White. Now, I think objectively from a basketball perspective, yes, but I wasn't like this might be a 2-year gap for them, right? Because Tatum has to come back from an Achilles injury. Then what does he look like the following season? So you're not going to just go balls to the wall to flesh out your roster again before seeing him, right? You're going to want to see what he looks like and whether you need a player who's better than him anymore.
Well, and like just the age factor, like Holiday has aged past his prime, and like he's not going to be anywhere close to that in 2 full years. Derrick White's 31, I think, or turns 31 soon. So you're talking about 2 years of age on Derrick White on top of that. And like, I mean, I know it's like sensational, but, and I've seen this written in other places, and it's like, I feel like it's too much, but it's like, isn't the cold-hearted move to just trade Jaylen Brown? Like, isn't that the one? Because there's all the money. There's how you get something back. That's not, because when we get into Porzingis trades, for example, it's like you're getting back slightly less expiring money, hopefully. Like, I don't, but if you want to prepare yourself for Jason Tatum, if and when he's back and if and when he's close to what he was, I think Brown is the only guy that's going to get you enough pieces to where it's like, oh, we can actually rebuild a roster around him. Whereas, like, if it's Holiday and Porzingis and White, it's just I don't think you're getting enough back to do more than just get cheaper. Like, you'll get cheaper, but you're not going to have the tools to really like get back into it.
But here's where that, because I agree, but then here's the flip side of that coin though, is what if Jason Tatum comes back and is more like a top 25 or 30 player than top 5 or 10?
Hmm.
You almost need Jaylen Brown more, because those resources you get for Jaylen Brown, are they going to give you the tools to get that player or enough
Well,
depth to
I,
offset that?
I would say they probably can't get you a player as good as Jaylen Brown, but they can get you a lot of players that are maybe get you close in the aggregate and don't make Jaylen Brown's salary. Like, I think that's a factor too, where it's like it's not going to get the rules unless we have another like an impromptu lockout and the CBA gets changed. Like, the second apron stuff is still going to be there. Tatum's going to be making a shit ton in 2 years, and Brown will also be doing that. And like, I don't know. I don't think Brown is going to be worth that, like, objectively.
No,
So I don't know. It like they're not going to do it. They're not
no.
going to trade. I don't think they'll do it. I'm just like, if I had no skin in the game, I think I would look really hard at moving Brown because just I'm going to get stuff at least.
Is there a team that you think, realistic team? We know Oklahoma City could make any team think about anything, but is there a team that could make them think, come in with an offer? And the one that I so there's the Philly'd be interesting because they're apparently willing to move the number 3 pick, but like you also then need to compensate a team to take on Paul George. 'Cause you're not trading Jalen Brown and then only saving $7 million or whatever it ends up
Right.
being. That's not like, you're not doing that. Would like San Antonio with the number 2 pick instead of like Giannis? Look at Jalen Brown's a little bit younger, right? And there's not that there's redundancy between Wemby and Giannis, but it's all right. Like, you're kind of spreading it out. We have De'Aaron 1-3-5. What are we when you're
Yeah.
building a big three type deal?
And like, if it's not Castle, like you do, if it's Giannis and Castle and Fox, like you got a pretty iffy shooting, situation. Brown does not create that same problem. I was actually thinking Houston could put something on the
And
table
you get
that,
young player where it's like the Spurs. Okay, you get that pick, but
yeah,
like with Houston, it's Jabari Smith on the Celtics would make a lot of sense. Anyone from the Rockets, you plug them in there would make a lot of sense.
yeah.
Yeah,
And what do they have? 10 or something? Like, did they get I
yeah,
forget
they have
what?
number 10.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. The problem with them though is like you need to still get a third team if you're looking to save a bunch of money. So
yeah.
in that
Well, that's
scenario,
that's gonna be a problem across the board with these
well,
Celtics trades.
that's why I think this would still be semi-nuclear. But you mentioned his age. Wouldn't more of the middle ground be trading Derrick White? Would be a trade where no, it's not going to get you under the tax by itself. He doesn't make that much money,
Hmm.
but you're going to get picks and a
Yeah,
ton of cap relief. And then maybe as part of it, you're also able to move a Porzingis and a Jrue Holiday, because that feels like the player that balances. You could get the haul,
right.
and it's not. Yes, it would hurt, but like you said, he's going to be 32, 33 in 2 years when Jason Tatum like is ready to go.
Mhm.
That feels like, I'm not saying it has to be the move, but if they were looking for, I guess, a shakeup that's going to accomplish a bunch of different things for them, that feels like the move then.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's your like semi-aggressive, but it's like it's your middle ground move between trading Brown and then just dumping Holiday or Porzingis. So one of the things I kept running up against, and we're going very off script. I know there's a few more bullets to get through here, but like, do you how do you get around the idea that what Boston wants to do is get cheaper in 25, 26? And the way that the league looks with cap space right now, like there's just nowhere to dump money other than Brooklyn. Like, you can trim, but you're taking back salary from basically everybody else. And all you can do is make the trade work at like the extreme parameters of like how much matching money you can, you know what I mean? Like, it's a huge problem in trying to put trades together because there's always money coming back to Boston, and it's like the whole point is to like get cheaper. How do we navigate that?
It takes a multitude of teams or deals. And so I'll kind of lay out one scenario for you. I was going to propose this to you as a hypothetical.
Okay.
And I know you have some Porzingis deals. Would Dallas trade PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and Dwight Powell to Boston for Jrue Holiday? And if they would, you send Dwight Powell to Brooklyn so that neither Dallas or Boston are taking in more money than they received. And I'm assuming they would just take Dwight Powell's a $4 million player option.
Mhm.
And then Boston, okay, in theory, like, oh, PJ Washington to soak up some Tatum minutes. And then you have Gafford with Horford going out. Now you have options. It's, can we still dump Porzingis, or those are players because you've broken now Jrue Holiday up into 2 smaller salaries
Yeah.
that you can then trade in. It gets easier to trade them into exceptions because there are some teams that have larger trade exceptions and are far enough beneath the tax where you can make something work. But to me, I look at it as like it's not even just about. I think they're probably going to need to move 2 players at least from their like core, but it's also just like it's not going to be just 2 moves. And if it is,
Yeah.
it's oh that was an 8-team trade that that just went
So
down.
are you thinking like, let's say the Gafford Washington deal goes down in the offseason and then you are hoping to flip them at the deadline to because you still if as long as you're under whatever apron or tax line you're trying to get under by the end of the season, you're good. So like you do not have to get all this savings done before the season starts. I know most people listening to this are aware of that, but it's like just we're trying to find like any flexibility we can and swinging all these deals. So you're thinking let's just break up some of these bigger deals into smaller ones, and those are just easier to move in subsequent trades. Like
Right, and I
that's
guess
the
the
way you
issues
do
you
it.
run into with a Gafford and PJ Washington is they are expiring, so that's kind of the
Right.
benefit, but it's also, well, you can't move them after the season is over because they're technically free agents.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, that would be unless it's just I mean, like, would Brooklyn just like is Brooklyn taking any I don't know what Porzingis trade, but is Brooklyn taking yeah, Jaylen Brown, sure, they would take him into cap space, but that's not I would be
Hmm.
shocked if that's the move that Boston's looking to do. Like, short of that, it has to take at least like, if you're trying to duck the tax, like, think about it this way, if you're trying to duck the tax with Porzingis and Jrue Holiday, I think they make about, like, 62 million combined or whatever it is. You can only take back, like, 20 to $22 million in salary, basically. And even that might still require, like, "Oh, we gotta move Sam Hauser because we gotta fill out the rest of the roster, and we'll still be into the tax or something."
Yeah.
Maybe you're fine being a little bit into the tax, but, like, that's like, you can't trade one player. You could trade one player and maybe figure out a way to no, you can't. Like, you're 20 million into the second apron. So, it'd be really hard to move one player and get out of the second. You could do it. I'm sure if it
Yeah.
was Derrick White, like, you could
Yeah.
figure out a way to do it. But, like, you're by extension, though, if you're doing that, you're hurting your return on that player because part of the value going out is this team saving us a bunch of money, and then it's also narrowing your focus because there are only so many teams that can do that,
And not
which is
only
why
that,
you make
who's
multiple moves.
who's rushing to help Boston out of this predicament? It's like there's few teams out there that can really be facilitators anyway, but it's
Yeah.
like if you're the rest of the league, Boston like it's almost like Boston's being like held hostage because it's like
Well,
ownership is going to have to foot this bill if this $500 million payroll and tax thing like other teams can squeeze like Boston doesn't have a lot to sweeten stuff with but other teams can just be really irrational and unreasonable and just like predatory in what it's going to cost you in other assets to get off some of this money if they really want to be like dicks about it.
do you especially if it's we're trying to get off all of this money or
Right.
most of it.
You don't need to
Now,
help these guys out.
I want to actually get to your trades, but do you think now Boston can trade up to 2 first rounders? They have the number 28 pick in this year's draft, and then they can only trade 2026 or 2027 because their 2032 pick is frozen. So
Hmm.
like now you get into you have some swaps. Do you think that any of their players, if they were trying to move them right now, would require a sweetener to move? Like, and I look at Jrue Holiday as the example, even though I think that he is better than Kristaps Porzingis right now. His contract is just longer.
Yeah.
Do you think that, like the Dallas deal I proposed, I think that could be something Dallas easily talks itself out of. But you could also say, well, Gafford is superfluous when we have, and even PJ Washington with Cooper Flag there and Najee Martin. Like, but are they even doing that? Like those
Well,
2 guys are expiring contracts, so it's low stakes. But you look at Jrue Holiday's money with what you're going to have to pay Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving moving forward.
mhm.
So do you view any of these players? And I think it really comes down to Porzingis or Jrue Holiday, to where it's you have to include if you're looking not even for a straight dump, but to save money. Like it's going to require you to attach an asset to them.
Well, so let's use the Holiday to Dallas thing as an example. I think normally Dallas would be like, we're spending this money on 3 players anyway. Holiday is better in the aggregate. Maybe that's true. I think that's true. But like Washington and Gafford are both starters. They were in the finals as starters like not that long ago.
Following them winning the Cooper Flag pick, I absolutely would make that trade if I was Dallas. Now, if they didn't have Cooper Flag, I think PJ Washington becomes like way more valuable to
Yeah.
them. So, but yeah,
No, I think like normally you just say, yeah, we'd rather have Drew Holiday for 33 million or whatever it is than these other guys. But because it's Boston, and because as Dallas or whoever you want to insert into this hypothetical knows Boston's got to move this, you're gonna be like, we're gonna need a pick. And if you like, I think you hardball it, and I think you probably have success because the Celtics have to get out of this.
Would
Porzingis is a weird case because he's expiring. But like,
and he's an anomaly still. If he's
yeah,
anywhere near healthy, like he's still just an anomaly at the position.
yeah, I don't know what to do with him. I'm gonna give you a
Ca
bunch of
Well,
fake
can I
trades
pitch
for
you on
Porzingis.
would Brooklyn do something like this? I think this just maximizes like if Boston said, "Hey, here's the number 28 pick and Jrue Holiday." Would
Hmm.
Brooklyn just do that? Because Boston's saving like 35 million when you factor in the maybe a little bit less because of then roster charges, but that's like $35 million in money. Is that enough? Or is Brooklyn like, no,
What's
that's not
Brooklyn
because
sending back? Nothing,
nothing.
basically.
It's their cap space that they're taking up. They, by the way, Brooklyn already has like a bunch of first round picks in this draft, but I'm just wondering, like, is that even enough to do that?
I mean, because if you're I guess if you're Brooklyn, it just depends on like, can we turn Holiday into more positive value? If so, we should just do this. We'll just take the free pick and then flip him for whatever. But if that were, I was gonna say, well, if that were true, then the Celtics would just trade him somewhere else. But it's like they can't for all the reasons we just talked about. It like, it has to be Brooklyn. So yeah,
Right.
that's really interesting. I would do that if I were the Nets and just bank on Holiday like being movable for more value.
Yeah, it'd be very like Sam Presti of them to do something
Yeah.
like that, it feels like. But I also just like you run up into okay, that extension is now beginning.
Hmm.
That that makes it weird, I
Yeah.
would say. So
Yeah.
I think they honestly, I think they'd be more likely to do it if you said, here's number 28 and Porzingis
Hmm.
because of the expiring thing.
Yeah. It's just wild to be talking about the Celtics trading guys with a pick for nothing. Like
I think
that's where
I
we're at.
and we would have been like had these reports say Jason Tatum never gets hurt and say the Boston Celtics lose anyway, you and I would have been like lampooning against this idea because now reporting saying, "Oh, they were always going to do like something kind of
Yeah.
drastic," and we would have been, "That's dumb." But now it's like, yeah, like we get it.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is how to phrase this delicately. It sucks that Jason Tatum got hurt. It's bad across the board. I do think if Boston had just lost, and Tatum were healthy, teams would be even less inclined to help them get out of this mess. But I do think a lot of teams around the league are looking at the Celtics as like, well, they're not contending again, so we don't need to be as like difficult to deal with. We're a little more likely to be helpful
Yeah,
as opposed to like, why would we help a team that's trying to win a title again? Just like, get a little
right.
flexibility.
You're
I don't
making
know.
them worse though. So it's like
It's bad either way.
it might matter more if you're a lot like so the Nets perspective, like, well, we're making them worse. Are they going to be someone who we're competing against in the lottery? Like, is
Mm.
that something teams will think about?
Yeah, I don't know. You wanna
What are
talk
your
some.
Porzingis trades?
All right, so, again, I'll just throw 'em I can rapid fire them to you, and you can just react. So, again, this is Kristaps Porzingis to the
No.
Detroit Pistons. Are you intrigued yet? Or a little bit? And all they're giving back are Simone Fontecchio and Marcus Sasser, and that's assuming that the Pistons basically don't bring back a bunch of their own guys, renounce rights, and they have, like, 26-ish million in cap space. So you just have Porzingis, and all it costs you is Fontecchio and Sasser.
But it also costs you Malik Beasley.
It does, and like maybe Tim Hardaway Jr.
Well,
on
that's honestly,
Schroeder.
I don't think they should re-sign Tim Hardaway
Okay.
Jr. and they're probably he might be back on the minimum if they would like.
Okay.
um, but then you have Porzingis, Stewart, and Duran.
Right.
That's
You're
weird.
moving Stewart probably, or you're just like Duran. We're not. I mean, like I'm intrigued by Duran Porzingis front lines just for fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, Stewart probably is gone, and you could trade him for value.
honestly, yeah. If you were gonna then trade Stewart for value and like still maintain act well, because you could. Oh no, because if you're using cap space, you can't be an over the cap team. You're only gonna have the room exception at that point. That feels such like a weird thing to say. I think it's if you were able to preserve like the room necessary to like I would prefer to can we find a third team, trade Isaiah Stewart into an exception,
Mm.
operate over the cap and re-sign Beasley, then I might consider it if I'm a
That's
trade.
because you're more creative about trades than I am. Okay, next one. Uh, Trading Porzingis, the number 28 pick in this draft. I believe the Celtics also have number 32.
They do.
And the 28 first round pick protected 2 to 14. That's the Spurs pick. They have a Spurs pick coming in from the Derrick White trade, I think, if I have that right.
No, don't they
Um,
have one going out?
if that's the case, then this is all fucked. I'm not going to look it up. So you get Porzingis 28-32. Coming back from the Bulls is Nikola Vucevic, who is also expiring, but it makes like 2/3 of what Porzingis does. Dalen Terry and number 12. This falls apart entirely if I had it wrong on that Spurs pick, which maybe I do.
So they're sending what are they sending into like Boston owes a first round pick to San Antonio in 2028. It's a
Then
swap.
oh, that's what it is. It's a swap. So could you trade some portion and make it like the worst of the worst of the
You
worst?
could, yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
I do that if I'm Boston. How much money are they saving as part of that deal?
Well, it's only like I think it's like 6 million, but then you're also cutting off whatever that is times whatever for the tax. But you're also like, you're not coming anywhere near getting under the second apron. You're gonna have to do something else to get under the second apron.
And so wait, I'm sorry, it was Porzingis, the
It's
swap,
Porzingis 28-32 and a portion of that swap. But you're getting back Vooch, Dalen Terry, and number 12 in this
oh,
draft.
I would pounce on that if I'm If the Bulls
Do,
do that, I feel like
do the Bulls do that? Giving up
no,
12?
I don't think
Okay.
so. So that they would be valuing Porzingis a bunch.
Right.
Yeah, I
Which
don't
the
think so.
theory would be if you're going to pay Josh Giddey a bunch of money and you're giving Modest Bazelis a bigger offensive role, it might be nice to have like a higher volume spacer and someone who could defend the rim if Giddey is also a part of your like big time rotation going forward. I don't know. We'll see. I can tell you don't like
That
it.
was definitely interesting for Boston. I like that for Boston.
I was trying to think of one where Boston like actually gets something. The 12th pick was the best I could do. Uh Kristaps Porzingis to the Warriors for Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, Trace Jackson Davis, and Guy Santos. Nothing else. Just 4 dudes. Celtics get like 2 shooters that maybe offset the additional loss of White or Holiday down the line. Warriors get Porzingis is expiring. Celtics save very little, but these are again, you've broken this up into chunks that you can
Yeah.
maybe trade into exceptions.
I actually like that for the Celtics more than I do the Warriors because we know what the next steps are for Boston, and with Golden State, it's all right. Like now you've obliterated some depth for Porzingis makes a lot of sense, but is he also intuitively is he a player that would normally like that you would view as a Warriors player if he's healthy?
I mean, DeMarcus Cousins was a Warriors player once, Dan. Anything's possible. Everybody can be a
Yeah,
Warriors
but he
player.
was at the mini MLE. Porzingis is at 30
Yeah.
million bucks.
Yeah. Also he's getting in the way of Quentin Post, who I excluded from this deal on purpose. It's just, okay. How about this? Porzingis and Peyton Pritchard. So we're aggregating. So this presumes that the Celtics did something else to get under the second apron. So just put that one in your brain. KP and Pritchard to the Pelicans for Kelly Olynyk and Herb Jones.
Ooh. Wow, that's interesting. I ultimately don't think New Orleans would do it,
I
but I
agree.
think that's if Porzingis is healthy, that's where putting him next to Zion. Wow.
Yeah, that you get a 1-year trial with it, and like I don't know, you got Trey Murphy. I mean, Herb
You all of
Jones
a
is
sudden
just
have a lot of shooting now with Pritchard and Murphy and
right. Pritchard
Porzingis
helps.
there.
Pritchard's not nothing. But this presumes that the Celtics have already gotten under the second apron before they do this deal. So,
Could
but
Can I throw like a hypothetical trade at you? Like if you're Brooklyn, would you take whether it's number 32 or whatever it takes, number 28 plus Porzingis plus Sam Hauser, and then I think Boston's like basically out of the tax at that point. Like Brooklyn's cap space is basically gone. Is that enough for Brooklyn to say like there goes our cap space, but we have an extra first round pick and Sam Hauser's shooting like could stay there for a little bit, and Porzingis is you could play him and Claxton together, I guess, if you really wanted to. Maybe you
I
think you could flip him for value at the deadline if he's healthy.
that's what I'm fixating on is like, does Porzingis as an expiring have more flippable value than Holiday with his years and dollars? Like, I don't know. Like it depends on probably not. Probably not. It's like there's a scenario where Holiday does get you real assets back, but like everyone bringing Porzingis on at the deadline would be like, well, this is a rental and he might just not be healthy for the playoffs. Like that feels scary. So, but Brooklyn gets 28 and 32 basically for vaporizing their cap space.
And they also have 26 and 27 and 19 and number 8.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of picks, Dan.
So, can I throw a Derrick White trade at you? We talked about it on the Warriors look
Yes.
ahead, and I want to throw it on the Celtics one because now I actually mapped out a framework for it.
Okay.
Now, what's contingent on this, aside from Boston looking at moving Derrick White, would be that the Nets have to have interest in Jonathan Kuminga and believe that the Warriors will match an offer sheet because they don't need to do anything to get Jonathan Kuminga.
Okay, so we're go ahead.
So Brooklyn is sending number 27 to Boston. The Warriors are sending their first round picks in 26, 28, and 2030 to Boston. And they are double sign and trading Jonathan Kuminga, and then Brooklyn can take its pick between Kevon Looney and Gary Payton the second. So the latter 2 years can be non-guaranteed. They'd function as expirings. But with base year compensation, they should still be able to match the Derrick White money for the Warriors. And then Derrick White goes to the Warriors. So as a quick synopsis, Brooklyn is giving up number 28 to get Jonathan Kuminga,
Mhm.
basically. And then Boston is getting 4 first round picks, not taking back any money in this scenario. And then Golden State is getting Derrick White for 3 first round picks, Jonathan Kuminga, and then a sign and trade with GP2 or Kevon Looney. Now, if we want to throw out alternatives, you could just include Moses Moody instead of doing this double sign and trade as well.
Yeah, I want so the sign and trade thing, you get hard capped at the first apron, right? If you so you
Not
don't
if you're
you
not only if you're acquiring. Um,
okay.
but the Warriors, you want the base year compensation to work out so that the Warriors are taking in less money than they're sending out because then they're
Uh-huh.
not hard capped at the first apron.
Yeah. I mean, if you know Kaminga's gone and like there's just not a the number doesn't matter as Golden State, like this has run its course, then like giving up 3 firsts, one of which will be in 26, which if things go well will be in the late 20s for White. I think that's a pretty reasonable future mortgaging because 28 and 30 is gonna be rough because you're gonna lose all your vets.
Yep.
So you just maybe have to eat that one. Um, but I think to make a run at it one more time or one or two more times, you might be willing to pay that as Golden State. And then the Celtics come out smelling like a rose because they're just a bunch of picks and they say they got off money without any coming back. That's pretty
Now
good.
the curveballs would be, what if Brooklyn says we're not including number 28? Would Boston still do it just for the 3 first round picks in raw savings?
I think you would have to, don't you think? Like, because now you've got other sweeteners,
If number 28 is like the deal breaker, the Warriors need to like figure something else out. Like
right?
if that's the deal breaker, the other thing would be, now what if Boston says they want this player or the Nets say they want this? Like if it has to be Moses Moody, you can't double sign and trade it.
So is the question, would I include Moody in that deal if I'm Golden State?
Yeah, if it's like pushed, like Boston or Brooklyn even says that they have to be involved.
That gets a little harder, but I think I just think Derek White is such a like a winning player and would matter so much specifically to the Warriors. I think I'd still do that if I'm Golden State.
You imagine a starting five of Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Pajemski, White, and Steph Curry?
That's like the highest collective basketball IQ. Well, the Nuggets have the highest collective basketball
Yeah.
IQ because they have Jokic, but like that's way up there.
I
That
think
would be pretty
that's
good.
it. Just if the Nets at all have interest in like a 2 year deal with John, like maybe a 2+1 with Jonathan Kuminga, I don't think that's like a imbalanced offer for anyone.
Yeah, right. And really too, like the Celtics getting picks, like one that softens the blow of like a couple of years from now when you have Tatum and like I don't know what else. But it's also another means to help you get off some of this other money. Like if you do come to wanting to trade, like Jaylen Brown's, I don't know what if he's, I guess he's positive value, but it's like there may come a point where we flip on him and it's like you're talking about him like you would Paul George or like not Beal, but like something more like that. Just having those picks, even if like maybe to move Porzingis, it might take a pick, or maybe to
Right.
move
Jrue
whoever.
Holiday might take
So
a bit,
that
or now it gets easier after Derrick White. You know what he's on the books for next season? It's like 30 million or
he gets up
something.
into the 30s now.
Yeah, so you get, and you are taking back a pick with money, so he's at 30.3. It's like you're saving, like, let's just round down and say 26, $27 million off rip. Then it makes it easier to, okay, we could take back money in a Porzingis or Holiday trade and still duck the tax.
Yep.
So, and like you said, you replenish the cupboard of picks. Like those are going to be cost controlled. You're getting another pick this year, and then you're getting a pick in 2000. Yeah, they're low picks, but those are just, you try to slide those, turn, let's say you try to turn one of or two of the 4 picks you have in 27, 28, 32, and then
Hmm.
that Warriors 26 pick into just a rotation player or two on a cost control deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like it would just, because Derek White's been so good in Boston, I just, at this rate, because this feels like a 2 year gap, I think if you're Boston, you'd have to, if that was available. And I think the biggest if honestly, more so than Boston's side is like, do the Nets even want Jonathan Kuminga? That's
Well,
like the
yeah. That so much of this offseason hinges on that, and who can say. I also would say, the Suns taught us that if you get 3 first-round picks, you actually get 9 because you can just trade each one of them for 3 shittier firsts, and so you just triple your money. It's the biggest scheme ever. I don't know why the Suns are the only team that ever figured that out.
do you have any other fake trades to throw about with the
I
Celtics?
had a Magic one.
Ooh,
So this is Porzingis to Orlando for Wendell Carter Jr., who makes friggin' nothing going forward, and Mo Wagner, who has a team option for next year. So the way that you've got to pick that up in advance, and that's saving the Celtics like 10-ish million plus the tax and penalty savings for next year. And then Wagner comes off, and then you have a starting center in Wendell Carter Jr.,
and
who's still like, we do the Jason Tatum jokes, but like Wendell Carter Jr. is also 19 years old perpetually.
yeah.
Uh, and he got an extension. I'm pulling it up right now. So next year in 25-26, he makes $10.9 million. And then he goes up to 18, 19.5, and 20.1 in 28-29, which is a team option. So like,
He actually gets up into the 20s? I'm
yeah,
shocked.
good for
I'm
him.
shocked.
So like, I don't know. That's kind of the middle way where Boston's like, yeah, we're saving money, but we're also getting a guy in Carter that like conceivably could just be a starter on the next very
Well,
good version of this team.
and the other thing you could do is, well, how much is he making next year?
10.9.
You could just send him into someone's non-tax, like, the Warriors would probably give you their t if they, let's say they have the non-taxpayer level available, they'd probably just take him into that and give you their 2026 first round pick for Wendell Carter Jr., I think.
Yeah. And like that, I mean, and the Magic get Porzingis, he can shoot. A very like short story on that one. But like, yeah, if you're
I like
Boston,
that
is
one.
that interesting? Do you like that one?
Because I think Boston could turn around and then if they like, if yeah, if you want Wendell Carter as like, we're gonna try to kind of use him to replace, we're gonna bring back Luke Cornett and then try and use him to replace like both Al Horford and Porzingis in different ways.
Right.
Yeah, you do that, and then you could probably grease the wheels of a Mo Wagner set. Like, I think there's a step to just like you save them $10 million a year. I think that could end up being 20 plus by
Mhm.
the end of it when you look at like other. I think that's my favorite one. I
The
like that.
only problem is, the Magic bring this to Franz, and he's like, "No." Like, "You can't trade my
Well, you know
brother."
what? You tell Franz to hit his 3 pointers, and then
Yeah,
he can have say
we'll
in
make a
whether
deal.
his
"Hey,
brother
Franz,
stays.
we're bringing in somebody that can hit
And
threes."
by the way, it's like
So
we just gave your brother a free $11 million because if you're keeping him, why are you picking up that team unless you want it as a trade piece
there you
later
go.
on?
Yeah.
I did want to ask you before we get out of here with the Celtics, is there just like any scenario where they don't go like the nuclear route and they're trying to compete next year and it's we're gonna duck the second apron, which I mean that's still $20
That's
million. So
that's
that is
hard.
nuclear. But is there so I'll say this. Is there any scenario in which thr through 4 of Al Horford, Derrick White, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, and Jrue Holiday are back? So those
How many
5 guys.
you named 5, where 4 of them are back, only
Yeah.
1 is gone.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
If they trade
um,
Jaylen Brown, is
and
that what
that
you're
one is Jaylen Brown. I think because otherwise you can't really accomplish what you need to accomplish. So yeah, that is the scenario. Is that a likely scenario? Like what? Oh, okay. I'm volleying back to you here. What is the percentage chance that the Celtics trade Jaylen Brown before 25-26?
It's higher than it was, right?
Well, sure. But it's like it's not 50%. It seems unlikely. But is it 25%? Is it 40? Is it
We
like
should
2?
do what we need to come up with our own, Dunked On does the what are the
The
fucking
Watfo?
odds?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to come up with our own version of that. I'm gonna say so basically before the start
Yeah.
or
They
of
they
26.
trade him this summer.
Oh, this summer before the
Yeah.
start of next season. I'm gonna say like 10%.
Okay. And I think I'd say I would go higher, but only because I think they're gonna look around at like they're gonna go the less drastic measures first, and they'll be like, "Oh, none of these are
Yeah,
gonna
maybe
work."
yeah, if like San Antonio or Houston or even I don't know if I mean, I guess he'd be a fit in OKC. Like if they
Sure.
just came bowling like down with offers.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Wow. Damn. That was this tough situation. This is what do we say all the time though? that these title windows, even when we knew there was going to be change in Boston, but it felt like they had an open-ended window, and they've had a longer window than most. This is not an
Mhm.
insult to them, but like there's always something. There's a trade demand. There's a contract coming up. There's the second apron. There's an injury. There's always something that's just going to change the trajectory of a team way sooner than it seems like.
Yep. This title window is shut, unfortunately. Like
This
they
it's even if they keep Jaylen Brown, I would hazard that the next time the Celtics window is open of this core, like maybe a maximum of one of these players is next to Jason Tatum still.
Yep. I think that's right. It sucks. It
It
sucks,
sucks.
but
I'm
yeah,
not rooting for it,
I
but
know. I'm glad they got that title. That helps. Got anything else?
no, you ready to take us
All
out
right.
of here?
Thanks everybody for grinding through it with the Celtics offseason, which is probably one of the harder ones we're gonna do because there's just not a lot to do. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, give us 5 stars wherever you're listening to this. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed there. Leave us some comments. Help the algorithm love us back. Join our Discord. Links for that are in the YouTube and in the podcast descriptions. I think it's gonna do it. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.